beautiful people, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to talk about shadowing. This is a topic that actually isn't brought up in music therapy that often because it's not necessarily required, but it is. So I just want to give a little background. So I know like practicums are starting up because it's the fall, and yeah. And I don't know, when it comes to practicum, I think everybody gets very nervous and very anxious. That's really common. I actually didn't know how common it was until I talked to my other music therapy friends about it. None of us slept well the night before practicum. And mainly the reason why is because it doesn't matter if it's your first practicum semester, your second, third, you really are going in blind. Like, you don't know what the population's going to do. You don't know the population. You don't really, like, you're learning repertoire. You're learning, your clients' names. You're learning their goals. You're learning, like, when's the best time to do a session with the client. I honestly think that internship was a lot easier in like that way, just because you're working with the same population, the same clients, you're going to the same facility, or at least I went to the same facility. We didn't change facilities. So there wasn't that, like, internship was definitely hard, and it was physically draining. It was physically and mentally draining, but I felt like there were a lot of variables in practicum that changed frequently, so you always had to be on your toes, and that didn't really help you learn necessarily. So I wanted to talk about shadowing today, because shadowing is a thing that we don't really do as music therapists. It's not necessarily required, but in the medical field, it is required. And that's why I wanted to talk about it, because it's really important. It's really important to shadow. And when I say shadow, I don't necessarily mean shadow a music therapist, because shadowing a music therapist is something that actually does happen, like in school, in classes, at your practicum, at your internship, you will be shadowing music therapists. So I don't really think you need to be going, like, unless you're high school or, you have friends who are music therapists and you can shadow them over the summer. Like, then that's fine, but I don't really think you need to go out of your way and try to shadow a music therapist, like, out of the blue. It's not like shadowing a doctor where it actually will help. Shadowing a music therapist, like, it really won't, it doesn't matter unless it's pertaining to your clients, your setting, like, so, yeah. So I think it's kind of a waste of time if you shadow a music therapist. Unless, like, you know somebody, or you got into a program, or your school, your high school, or your college has a program set up. Like, if that's the case, then do it, because it can't hurt. But I wouldn't go off and try to call all these people to try to shadow a music therapist, like, all on your own. It's just going to be too frustrating. What I do suggest, if you're into shadowing or volunteering, just to kind of get a feel for client populations, because that's, like, most important. I mean, you read about what it's like to work with a child with autism, but you're not really going to understand. You could read all you want, but you're not going to understand until you actually, like, sit in a room and spend, like, a good 16 hours. And yes, 16 hours with them, because that's the longest shift that you'll probably ever have as a music therapist. So that's, like, an example of what you kind of want to look for. And you don't have to be a musician to be able to shadow or even to volunteer. So I brought this up in another video. There's a food pantry, like, not too far from where I live, and most of the clients that come to the food pantry are either older adults in the community or they're adults with developmental disabilities. So volunteering at the food pantry, yeah, okay, I'm there for like 2 hours, if that, and I don't do music. Like, I just, like, put like canned beans and cornflakes into, like, boxes, and then I give the boxes to the people I'm like, that's it. Like, it has nothing to do with anything that I'm going to, like, it's nothing to do with anything, and it's, like, really easy. But the point of the matter is that I get to see what it looks like. I get to see, like, what does it look like to be an adult with developmental disabilities? Like, can they walk? Are they in wheelchairs? Do they need a personal assistant? Like an older adult, you know, who's like 80 years old. You might think in your head, like, what that looks like, but you're not actually going to know until, like, you're there. Volunteering in a nursing home is also a good idea. Again, I would recommend doing, like, culinary. I wouldn't tell them that you're a musician, because then they're going to, like, think that you want to get paid. Or they might think that you're a volunteer musician, and then you don't really want to open that can of worms unless, like, you're planning on staying in the community, which you probably won't if you're going away to school. So volunteering in a nursing home is great, and like again, I would suggest culinary. I would suggest, like, answering the phones, like doing something not music therapy related, because the point of volunteering and shadowing, well, for music therapy, is to actually see what it's like to work with these clients, to see what they actually look like. What do they look like? How do they act? How do they talk? And, like, I mean, again, it can be population specific. Like, if you get an internship or a practicum at a specific, like, specialized hospital or a specialized unit, but you know, when you're undergrad, like, you really don't know where you're gonna get put, and all clients with the same disability, same age group, they all act the same. I'll give you a really funny story. It's not necessarily funny, but back in the day when nursing homes weren't nursing homes, like, they were horrible places, because I don't really know if they were actually horrible or not, but you know how, like, some people, they won't put their family in nursing homes because they're, like, horrible places? Well, I think that this thought process was started based on this story I'm about to tell you. So my great-grandmother went into a nursing home. I don't really know why. I don't know why she didn't live with somebody in the family, but whatever. She went in a nursing home, right? And my mother and father went to go visit her, and she had a shared room. And she was there, right? And then she was with a roommate that, I guess, like, didn't have anything, like, they were the same age, but other than that, like, their disabilities weren't the same. Like, my great-grandmother, she was depressed. No duh, like, what older woman in a nursing home isn't depressed? That's, like, not uncommon. She was depressed. She wouldn't eat. Again, that's not uncommon. But I think she used a walker. She wasn't wheelchair bound, but she did need medical assistance 24/7, and that's why she was in this facility. Whereas the woman that she shared the room with, I don't really know if she must have been, like, wheelchair bound, or maybe, like, partially ambulatory, like, maybe she had a walker. But the point is that she had a mental disorder, because this woman would not stop, like, cackling, talking, and when she talked, she didn't talk, like, full sentences. It was almost like baby talk. So clearly, like, this woman, you know, my great-grandmother, like, yeah, she was depressed and she didn't eat, but, like, she could still talk, she could still, like, you know, use a walker. She just, like, needed medical assistance. Whereas this other woman, she needed medical assistance too, but she also, like, wasn't cognitively there. And the two of them, even though their disorders were different, because they were the same age, they were put in the same room. And nowadays, that probably wouldn't, actually, I could tell you that all the nursing homes I've worked in, that definitely wouldn't happen. Moving on. So another thing is that, so my father, you know, they were visiting, my parents were visiting, and my mother was, like, in the room, and my father went downstairs and must have, to get, like, something to eat, something to drink, which again wouldn't happen now. You can't just go downstairs and get, like, a snack, you know, they have designated meal times. But you know, it was different back then. Anyway, so he goes downstairs, and this woman, this old woman with dementia, right, comes up to him and is like, "Excuse me, sir, can you walk me outside? My son's coming to pick me up. My son's coming to pick me up. We're going to go on the train." And my dad's like, "Okay." Now, the funny part about this story is that when I worked in 3 different nursing homes, and every single time somebody comes up to me, woman or man, and they come up to me and they're always like, "Oh, can you take me outside? My son's coming to pick me up. My daughter's coming to pick me up." It's always the son or the daughter. My grandkids sometimes I've gotten. It's never the wife or the husband, but it's always like the son, the daughter, the kids, the grandkids. Every single time. I think that has happened to me 5 times, and all different patients, right? And this same situation was happening back then when nursing homes weren't like they are now. So that guarantees that, like, no matter what, like, it doesn't, like, unless you're in a specialized hospital, every population, every disorder acts the same way, and they've been acting this way for a while now. So you know, you can volunteer at, like, Sunrise Nursing Home and then get a job at, like, the local hospital's hospice dementia unit, and you're going to experience, like, the same sort of weird stuff. So that's why I say that, like, shadowing is important to kind of get your mind out there, and don't be my father and get all thrown off when somebody asks you to walk them outside like he did, because he didn't know that that was something that people with dementia, Alzheimer's, they do. Like, but it's been happening for all these years, and I can say that, like, it's not going to change. And most populations, I mean, like, give and take, but, like, most of them act pretty much the same way. And you'll get a better sense of how the population acts and what's appropriate to say in an uncomfortable situation if you have experience seeing or short interactions with the population. So I recommend, taking a step, jumping in there, checking out the food pantry, checking out the soup kitchen, checking out any nursing homes or hospitals. They might throw you into, like, general medicine or emergency medicine, which isn't necessarily going to help, because usually, you know, like, emergency medicine, they're, like, cognitively fine. It's just they're physically hurt. So that's not necessarily going to be the best for you as a music therapist. And in a hospital, they probably won't put you on a psychiatric unit, because they're not going to think that you're capable of it. And I'm going to be straight up, you probably aren't, because I was on a psychiatric unit one time. It was a acute psychiatric unit, and I had experience, and there were still times I was, like, shooken up from what was going on. So you probably won't get, like, a good shadowing experience in a hospital. Nursing homes, better. Nursing home, soup kitchen, volunteering. Church is really good, like, because then you get a feel for, like, older adults, and they're, like, cognitively there, but you'll see, like, what they need help with physically, what's appropriate and what's not appropriate to do physically, or to assist physically. And then school is probably the hardest one. That's the one I don't recommend shadowing, just because schools are very particular in what they want from people when they come into the building, when they come in to volunteer. So school's going to be the hardest. School's the hardest. Hospital's second hardest. So I don't really recommend those two. I recommend soup kitchen. They might even have a thrift store. But again, like, it doesn't have to be anything music. It actually might be a good thing if you don't do something music. If you do something like culinary, or you do, I don't know, answering the phones, taking attendance, like, anything like that, answering emails. Like, I think it might be good, especially if you're doing this over the summer or maybe you're doing it on the weekend. It would be really good to kind of get your mind off of music therapy, and just to kind of absorb the population and the facility. So that's my advice in terms of shadowing. I think it would be really beneficial, and I think it would give you a heads up in practicum, and maybe it would cure some of that anxiety that we all feel when we begin practicum. Okay, I hope it helped. Talk to you guys later. Bye.